Welcome back to Britain's Worms. Today we are going to be sifting these castings and see if there's any cocoons in them. These are the castings that we sifted last week. We're using the smallest screen today, which is 3mm, just over 1/10 of an inch. So today we set up one bin that we'll be putting cocoons in. We'll inoculate it with some of the castings in case there's anything that hatched and we find them. This will be again catching other worms. So you can see I have a couple cocoons there. Kind of hard to pick up with gloves, but you also see I have a baby that hatched, so we're just gonna go ahead, put it in there. I'm just gonna gently encourage him. Down into our other bin. And basically anything that doesn't sift out to this finer stuff is going to go into this bin with the cocoons, and this stuff that goes in with it will inoculate the new bedding. So it's already been growing microbes and all that good biota from having been in the other tote. So right off the bat, as I'm picking up some, you see We got a little guy right there. So he'll go into the worm bucket. So will this little guy. Once you've been doing this, your eye will start to catch the wiggles and be able to pick them out. When I first started, it took a while. I was a little slower at seeing them because my eye wasn't trained for what I was looking for. Here's a good little guy. And if a couple of these bigger ones make it into the cocoon bin, it's not the end of the world. I was just watching a fellow wormer last week who said she started leaving a couple adults in the cocoon bin and called them the nanny worms. The theory is that they encourage the cocoons to hatch because they sense other worms around. That's the theory. And she said it was working for her and she was having better hatch rates. Let's see, some of my adults must have made it in last week. That one's a good one. You see it has a good clitellum right there. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. I've noticed that the worms that have the bigger clitellum kind of swollen are usually ones about to lay a cocoon. My theory comes from the fact that I've seen one with a really fat clitellum, and when I went to feed them later that day, it was shedding it. It was rolling it off of its body. It's pretty cool to see. And I'm hoping someday I'll get to catch it on camera. balls like this. It won't smush, but I'll try to break it down a little. Sometimes I've found worms right in the middle of those little balls, and sometimes cocoons. Alright, so this is what my hatchery is going to look like. This is our first one. Now you can see I've left some room here because it's got to go back into the tower, but I want to have room to put the bubble wrap and my towel newspaper over it. Alright, so one thing we want to do is feed this new bin. But first, as I was digging out one of my newspapers and bubble wraps for the covering, I just want to show you how hardy these can be. So this bin is from last week when I was sifting out all of my towers, and I was just collecting because we're going to reuse. And they're still in good shape, but I didn't necessarily clean them off. And to show you how hardy it is, and these were ignored, you know, because it's just newspaper and bubble wraps. And look at, you can see some worms just hanging out. In the newspaper. And probably can't see this one very well, but a little baby that hatched. So that just goes to show you that these guys are fairly simple. I'm not going to say hard to kill, but I'll go through that one after I do this. And probably just put them into my adult bin. So for feeding. Some worms could have made it through there. It's mostly just castings and the cocoons, but when they hatch, they're going to need some food. So basically, we have a cornmeal. I try to find the, I'm not saying you need expensive, but, you know, these guys are going to feed my plants with their castings, so I want to feed them something pretty decent, but I don't also get anything overly expensive. But the less chemical ridden stuff, the better. Because remember, you eat what they're eating, essentially, in the circle of life. So, we got cornmeal. All this is going to act as grit and stuff. And this is, this one is the ground up oyster shell. And we'll have a video down the future of doing these. Because usually, I didn't get to it this week, is I make a jar of this mixture. The mix is usually a 2-to-1 of the cornmeal flour and, or oats, not flour, but oats, and then 1 part of the oyster shell. So this one is just ground up oats, and all of it acts as a protein and a grit. And if there's any adults or juveniles that made it through that sift or dumps, because again, those clumps I didn't actively break up or anything, so they can hide in those pretty well. And then I'm just going to gently mix, because I don't want to smush any of the cocoons that I got, but we'll gently mix it. So like this guy, I'm going to leave these guys in there. They'll be the juvenile nannies, little babysitters for the cocoons, and those little guys will get to eat some of this grit. I like to get it fairly mixed. I find that if I just leave the layer on top, it is very attractive to some little critters I have in my lot. But mixing usually masks it a little. And show you, like, that is a good sized cocoon right there. So those are the guys that we're wanting to hatch. And then what we'll do is we're gonna cover it up with this newspaper. And then we'll take our layer so the towel doesn't necessarily smash it with bubble wrap. And then get our towel on there. And that just acts as another barrier, trying to keep out as many critters as possible. I don't yet have a worm shed yet, so take the precautions I can, and then just stick it in the tower. And you'll see the tower on another video. I give a tour of it. And that is what we will be going through today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.